Hello, everyone. Welcome back, friends and colleagues and peers of the program. Welcome on back. Been living life here. Still trying to get that intro music going. I apologize. This is just like the cut and dry cryptocurrency podcast. I mean, we don't pull any bullshit here. You know that there's no glitzy, glamorous advertising that they use in whatever Burbank or the hills of California, or so like I don't delve into all of that whimsy flim flam that I just doesn't amount to anything. But what I'm mentioning to you is a desire of mine to be more fake in life. Uh, I think for a minute I was thinking that like I was fake, but actually the problem that I have is that it's too honest, I think. But like the world a lot of times maybe is under the impression that you're not supposed to lie. But there's these dynamics I think that exist, like telling the truth or telling a lie, that everybody wants to be on the side of, well, I'm a truth teller, but there's a big push musically for lyrics that people are writing, or I guess just artistically during the years like 2000 to 2015, and more like '05 to 15, for people to be real or genuine, and like, I mean, it still persists today. You're like, I am the realist in the game. Everybody wants to be the realist. It's just that the last 5 years we've had a different take on that, I'd say. Just artistically, things going on, lyrics that people write in songs. At some point we realized that there's something superficial about being real, or being the most real. I think that it's basically always superficial, maybe, to be real, or the world of the fake actually offers a lot more for you and for I. The world of the fake, or like conspiracy, imagination, things that you can make up, and yeah, like things that you can make up. Somebody who doesn't like conspiracies, that's what they would refer to it as. You're just like, oh, bullshit that you could make up. But the realm of, you go into where you can create things, things that have not yet been created, like go into imagined, like imagine things or make analogies for things that are already true, like say them in an artistic way, like the conspiracy theorist David Icke. He's this British guy that just tells tales of like reptilian creatures. He's like, the moon is this giant radar signaling machine that's like beaming frequencies onto the earth in order to manipulate narratives and shit like that, and reptiles are running the world. But like, so there's conspiracy theorists like that say that out there, but this guy that I'm talking about kind of weaves this whole tale like it's a giant analogy or a giant movie, when it's like the things he's saying aren't exactly true, but maybe they could be an analogy for behaviors that are exhibited in real life in people, and especially among leaders and shit like that. Like it it helps to be able, like, you could say things. Conspiracy allows you to say things that are crazy, but they're like, I think when people talk about reptiles, or they talk about, like, they talk about reptiles, that just represents reptilian behavior in humans, which does exist. But like, conspiracy allows you to tell tales and analogies, whatever. But I'm just saying that there's the world of the fake, and it kind of has no end. Like there's no end to the depth of that. It's like perception itself, or if you're allowed to say more about perception, it would be a similar thing, as delving into the depths of the world of the fake. Because if you were to give yourself access to any kind of perception, then it's like giving yourself access to lunacy. or saying like whatever standard for describing things is okay. And so, yeah, like if you already listen to this program, you're probably on board with conspiracy, so I don't need to combat the haters, really. I probably spend too much time doing that. My podcast, well, this is what you'd say if you didn't like it. It's all right. I don't have to spend all that time trying to figure out what somebody would say about it, but like hopefully I start my new podcast. I might continue this podcast and then start a new podcast, the one I was referring to in my most recent episode where I'm driving around in my car and then the video would be just of the road. I might start that podcast. That one would have guests on it. That might be a completely different podcast from this one, and then I make this one maybe more focused on cryptocurrency, but but this isn't a cryptocurrency podcast. I'm just talking about currency, but in other words, there are many standards for relevance. That's what I talk about with currency. And the standards for relevance they're spoken in currencies that people come up with either for your nation or like a cryptocurrency, but there's just all of these standards like the US dollar and America because it has these borders. Because it's a country, it gives everybody a standard for money that's really standard, but it's just like a temporary meeting place, but in which people can exchange. But that's really just what words are or sentences. Like a conversation that you have is an opportunity to interface with people, and then like the words that you come up with are mediums that are platforms through which you can exchange information. I'm getting paranoid about the sounds that birds are making at this moment. Paranoid thoughts running through my head about the sounds that birds are making, but like I'm not really like that paranoid. Like I'm not actually one of those crazy people holed up in their house or anything. Sometimes maybe I like to give that impression. Or like maybe that's what you would think. Like I kind of maybe like to paint that picture a bit too much. Like, the go into the world, like I like the world of the fake or the conspiracy world, or like I'm actually this very paranoid, like very schizophrenic person or something. I mean, I just kind of like to emphasize what could be judged about me for some reason. It's not really true, very like all of the time, and so it's not always the best to try to make content or monetize or materialize a disorder, but it is like generally a disorder. Some of them are like disorders that I infringe on, or that I could say that I have. Like, but I'm not, I mean, to some extent right now, I'm just arguing with somebody who would tell me that I wasn't paranoid, but like I definitely am, but I'm not that crazy. Like I go out, I might try to emphasize or like build up the persona of that I really am like very paranoid or something, but it's not really. I'm not that much of a loner, like, and I don't aim to be. I aim to progressively be less of one. That's what I'm communicating to you, and then I'm telling you tools that I might use in order to like help myself out of that situation. How do you become less of a loner? And like then I tell you about things that I'm venturing into in my life, in like as proof that I am more than just the words. But like there's people on YouTube like PewDiePie, and I don't know that he does anything outside of just making YouTube videos, and all of his content is generally just his commentary, or like you're just living off of what his brain thinks, but he doesn't ever have to answer to that. But like I put myself in a position here, like since I'm the only person here, that I have to answer to it, but it's like I'm not really that much different from a YouTube commentarian. Like, but PewDiePie has over 100 million subscribers, and he doesn't have to prove himself actively in the world in any way. Besides, like most of his videos are just him commenting on something, and I don't know why I have so many expectations on myself, or like, or whatever, but um like, the point that I'm making to you right now is there's the world of the fake, and the world of the fake has a lot more depth. Like, if you were to allow yourself to consider any perception that allows you to go into any alternative perception or alternative belief, such as like you could then delve into conspiracy, or just thinking that like ghosts or spirits are real, or aliens are real, or even if you want to, that like skinwalkers and shapeshifters are real, or like people that are actual reptiles, or like from another planet, or people that could shapeshift to in an instant look like a reptile, and then in an instant not look like that anymore. But I guess that would be something like a demon, rather than like, if it was a shapeshifter, that's more of like a demon, or like a spirit that embodies commonality, is sort of what that references, if you want to abstract the idea of demons a little bit, rather than pigeonhole it to like a specific set of images, like what you would normally think a demon is, or just like referencing it with Satan kind of limits what a demon. Ultimately, like, a demon is probably more like a shapeshifter, meaning that it's more like really agent, probably could be anything. If you are likening them to shapeshifters, or allowing your speech to include those, like allow those things to be in association, demons and shapeshifting, which it's like, I mean, it sort of is like that. It's sort of like that, I guess. Sometimes I think that my dog is just like an evil spirit that lives in my house. Like, that's the way that it that's the way that it is a little bit, because sometimes I just tell him to go in the other room, and then he's just like making noises in there at me, to like, because he still wants attention. Like, he's not doing that all the time, but like he generally just wants to be seen all the time. So like, when he's not seen, he's just making noises at me. But it's like, I don't like when he does that, and it's annoying to me. And it would be like if a ghost was in here and haunting me. But it's like the same way that a ghost doesn't need to exist. Like, it's kind of weird that any haunting would take place when you consider how many people die in the world, and then their ghost doesn't haunt anything. Like, people die in houses, or they pass away in houses, and then the ghost of that person, there's not stories later on of them haunting the place in most cases. Like, most people that pass on, there aren't any reportings of their ghost, besides like maybe their relatives might say, oh, I felt his presence or something. But like, there's kind of a standard that you would want to think about with regard to ghosts, which is that some of them surface, like, some of them are memorable, like the ones that actually haunt a place for years and years after, because some houses are haunted, and then sometimes they can actually pin it down to be like, oh, it's this one woman, and we see her ghost, and she died, and she might, and like, even the motivations, like, this is why she's haunting the house. But the point I'm making is that ghosts are better than others, but like, there's this whole network of people that have died. Like, there's this whole network of dead souls, but like points of reference as far as like, okay, this is a dead person, people that meet the criteria, meaning that they died. But there's so many points of reference for the network of dead people, and then you consider that most of those people that died haunt nothing, and they don't surface at all in anybody's memory. They don't show up anywhere. But then there are ghosts that they're like, for whatever reason, the memory of them haunts a house, or haunts people's minds. Like, it could just be like, Carl Jung died a long time ago, but he, like, his works of art sort of haunt the world, but they reverberate into the world for years into the future, just because of the influence that he left. But sometimes somebody dies, and then that's all that it takes for them to reverberate, for their influence to continue to haunt the world. But it's like, don't ignore that there's something valuable about a ghost haunting a place. And sometimes you can build a ghost tour around it the hauntings of a place, like you can make money off of the memory of a dead person if the haunting is persistent enough, like, or memorable enough or interesting enough, then you can make money off of it. But it's like you can't make money off of every dead person's memory. But the people that, for whatever reason, there might be a strong amount of like data of people seeing things regarding a ghost haunting a house or something. Like if somebody died in a house, and then there's lots of reports of like, okay, this ghost is in here. There might be like a lot of them, or there might be a few of them, but like, I forget exactly what I was starting into by saying that, but like there's different standards like for a ghost haunting a place. It's just that like if it was a major murder and then there's lots of hauntings afterward for like 100 years, there's a ton of activity, or there's a ton of energy or something that you would have to say like, well, there's a lot more of ghost here than there is in places that there aren't any of them. And you could actually maybe make money off of one that there's a lot of activity, but like this, whatever ghost that is, has left their mark by continuing to haunt a place. And, but it's like, I'm talking about this in reference to my dog, but like my dog, in some senses, he's just like an evil spirit that haunts, because like if I'm just listening to him from the other room, it would be like if a ghost, like, for the same reason that a ghost doesn't need to show itself, like, but some do because they are more inherently memorable, like their life on Earth, or like somehow left a mark after their death for whatever reason. Like there's something to be said about that, right? Like don't ignore the dead, or don't make it that like, okay, everybody that's dead is completely gone. That's what people like to do, to ignore that there's any ghost activity at all. But it's like, you can't say that there aren't ghosts, because there are thousands of people all over the world like reporting new shit every single day, and it's not going away either. There's not going to be a day where people will stop seeing these things. And so we have a word, ghost, and people use whatever they're seeing as a ghost, they file it under that category. And so are you going to continue to say that, oh no, there aren't that, when there's hundreds of people validating the category that exists for this and saying, oh, this is real? Like, you can say that they aren't real, but there are, like, it'll never stop that this word exists and people engaging with the word and the reality of the word. But the world we live in, is already like integrated with the reality of that word and the reality of ghosts and the genre of them. And like, for whatever reason, some people are able to manifest themselves past their own death to haunt places more than others. But like a haunting is like the spirit continues to be there, or whatever. But it's like, I'm just making the point that like my dog is like an evil spirit, like haunting me, like surfacing with, he's like making noises, coming out of the blue to haunt me, to communicate to me things that I don't want to see or hear. Like, a ghost might actually be more joyful to be around than a dog that just wants to be seen. But like, why would a ghost haunt a place unless it wanted to be seen or still wanted? Like for whatever reason, it needs more attention than other ghosts that just went away, because hauntings are kind of relative. But like, I'm being serious. But like, one thing I wanted to talk about also is that, yeah, so I could see it as that he's like an evil spirit. Like a ghost wouldn't necessarily say anything positive or negative. I feel like most ghost activity that I've seen that people have caught on camera, it's like they're really, and what people talk about with them is that there aren't like, most of them aren't poltergeists, most of them are benign. But like, this dog is actively in my life and doing obnoxious things all the time. Like, he is more like a poltergeist or something. Like, he's worse than a ghost. and like he's always making noise, whereas a ghost would actually just appear a couple times. And that's sort of what it's like, but I am giving you the perspective, like, let's say negative things about our dogs, because I was talking about embarrassment in the last episode. One thing that I find embarrassing is just like bringing a dog everywhere. Like, it's an embarrassing situation to have a dog on a leash and be walking him around. Like, that's embarrassing. And like I've been talking about this really probably the whole time I've made any of my podcast episodes when I was making Identity, that maybe a better way of describing, like, whatever, me walking around with a dog is like that. I don't like it because it's embarrassing. And it's embarrassing to like to walk around with a dog and then have other people see you. Like, why is that even happening? But it's kind of embarrassing because, like, am I supposed to, like what is the extent of what's expected of me in this situation? It's almost like people would have me lay down my life for this dog or something. Like, yeah, I can just already, I just feel like if I'm really talking negatively about dogs, people don't want to hear it, and then people are going to tune out. So, or maybe there's something insincere about what I'm saying. Like, maybe I don't think it's really insincere, though. I think it's like, it's kind of embarrassing that, like, when I first got a dog, I immediately had this sense of, like, I'm really afraid that he's going to die. Like, the same kind of thing that you hear about, like, if you have a child or something. Like, the second I got this dog, I was terrified that he was going to die. And this isn't because, it was like right when I bought the dog, this isn't because I love the dog, because I don't love a dog that I just bought that doesn't make any sense, and I don't necessarily feel love. It's just like, the reason I'm really terrified he'll die is because of fear of social shaming towards me, because you're really, if you own a dog, you're really not supposed to let anything happen to it. And it's like, you would probably, if a dog died because you were negligent, there's people that would be upset with you or whatever. Just kind of like the social stigma of, like, somebody who's negligent with a dog, when we hold dogs in such high regard in the society. I mean, that's the only way I could explain why I would feel that way, like, instantly. Like, I'm afraid that he's going to die, or like I'm terrified of what's going to happen, so I feel like I have to watch him. And like, I've basically had that feeling ever since, like, oh, like he's a child or something. But this is embarrassing that I continue to have the dog, and like, then because society expects these things of me, it's almost like they're expecting me to like be like lay down my life for a dog, or like, because society kind of treats it like I'm a parent, and then they call me a dad and shit like that. And like, that whole thing is embarrassing, that it's like, because of course I wouldn't lay down my life for a dog. That's maybe something more reserved for when you have a baby. But like, society is so obsessed with dogs, I guess, is maybe the like social pressure I feel that makes me terrified that he might die. But it's like, it's just like sacrifices I've made, and towards a dog at this point, like, oh, you don't want it to die when you've made all these sacrifices. That's that kind of thing. But people are really quick to call that love when it isn't that. Or like, people are kind of quick to call love anything, but it's like as a means of making you confined to a situation, probably. Like, please recognize that people hold love over people's heads. Basically, everybody does. And like, people have gotten away with it for too long, for years and years, just because everybody thinks that like all you need is love, and that ultimately all that we're doing this is for love. Or like, at the end, like, people just get into their heads that as long as they're doing it in the name of love, then it will be okay no matter what. Or like, it's just that over the last 50 years, we've made love something like God in American society. Like, I mean, people, I don't think people have been doing that for like every century or whatever. But anyways, like people definitely will use love to say that you need to do these, like they'll like hold love over your head in order to make it so that you're engaged in a thing, when it's really like some of what people are calling love is like fear of breaking rules, or it's just adherence to legal matters, like like that, where I wouldn't want the dog to die, but and then people be like, well, it's just like love that makes you bonded in that way, when it's not love, and that's not a specific way of describing it. It's like I'm afraid of social shaming, but there's a lot of things that are that there, but people hold love over people's heads just to like make sure that everybody stays connected, or like, well, you can't cross love, and so you can't cross connectedness, and we're all trying to do everything for the good of the collective or whatever. But like people just use love as the word to say that you like, because nobody can defeat that, and nobody can say that they are anti-love. And so people just, at this point, it's just kind of a parody. At this point, it's just a ruse where people are like, well, you have to get together with us because of love, because you can't not like loving, or like you're the one who isn't the loving person, or you're the one who is purposefully being disconnected. If you go against love, when it's like you can use the word love or the idea of it to smooth out any differences, or like say that you're in the right in any argument. You could be like, well, I'm on the side of love, and you should be too, or else what are you, like a disagreeer or something? Are you negative, or you're going to be on the wrong side of history? Or like people act like love is always progressive, or like it's the future, that like is what I'm saying, treating it like it's God, like it's the future, like the future will one day realize that what we needed the whole time was love, when really love is just a tool. It's a tool that a lot of people use to hold over people's heads, whatever. I didn't want to like be really negative, but I just had things I wanted to say about the dog, I guess, and so that always gets into negative territory, because I don't really know why I feel so much negativity towards this dog. He isn't like the worst ever. It's just like it's just that there's such few discussions to be had about like people not liking their dog, that it kind of just makes me lash out in like anger, or like I'm just kind of confused. I'm kind of confused because it seems like I'm the only person who has the story, because it's just never the story for anybody that they don't like their dog. And but like that's barely my story. It's not like the full thing. I'm kind of exaggerating. But like even if that's the case a little bit, so few people give it any mention of that. But anyway, like it's annoying that the YouTube algorithm rewards British people no matter what, like especially for video gaming channels. They're like any British people will come up on the YouTube algorithm for like gaming channels, or I look up video games, like I look up people just playing Grand Theft Auto, and then British channels of British commenters come up, and that whole thing really, it's starting to piss me off. Like I'm starting to get angry at British people, because there seems to be this overemphasis on like British people, or I think that Twitter and YouTube reward British people, and then like there's a lot of American institutions that want to put a good face on things, like for marketing or advertising purposes. They're using British people more and more. It's like if there's a conference going on, you have to throw in a British person for some reason, even for things that are like American. It's just like and not necessarily British, could be Scottish or whatever, just somebody with an accent. But like what pisses me off about it is there's like they need to use somebody with an accent because they know that it works for advertising purposes or something, and it's basically racist thing where like America is racist, and for some reason Britishness plays well in America, or it's like that's a realm of diversity that we're able to take because we don't have like we don't have that much a tolerance for different diversity that appears in advertising or just like appears in leadership generally is what you would say. Like statistically, that's what you'd say, because there's like not a high representation of women CEOs or black CEOs. And, but like, British people as represented is fine. Like, as far as people complaining about it, because the right is going to complain about when there's overrepresentation of minorities in advertising generally. They'd be like, what is this bullshit about? I mean, I am inclined to do that myself. Not minorities, but maybe like sometimes I might complain about like the feminist movement apparently is just about putting women in Adidas commercials or like women in cleats. Like, oh, okay, we did it. Or what are you trying to accomplish, or what does that do for women? Besides like put pressure on all of them to be star athletes and shit like that. Like, but I'm saying that like when there's representation of British people, like the YouTube algorithm brings up random YouTube channels of British people. I just feel like they're favoring people with accents, but they favor the British, and the British is like England at this time is more authoritarian, and they're more rule abiding, and they have surveillance cameras all up over London, and they're like okay with it. Like it's similar to China, but America isn't okay with that. But it's like England are they're more rule followers, and I feel like there's American media, and especially the leftist, like YouTube and Facebook and Twitter, I feel like there's this leftism that emphasizes British people and gives British people a platform the same way that they give minorities a platform over like white Americans or something like that. Because, and part of it has to do with like British people are rule followers, or like they're exemplary, but that's just this, like, there's this mentality that exists across Americans for like these stereotypes about the British, that they are exemplary or they are rule followers, or it's like we need to listen to them because they're smart or they're intelligent because of the way they talk makes them sound intelligent. But like a lot of that is like a lot of whatever is perceived intelligence about British people, I think a lot of that is overblown. Maybe that's a problem that I'm addressing, is like British people aren't actually smart. They just, enough time dedicated to putting on a smart persona, I think actually does make you smart in some senses. But it's like, it's kind of like an act or a character, but it's like in order to be smart or intelligent, actually have people call you that, you do have to play a character, you do have to dress up your vocabulary and like maybe talk like you're British, like the way that, Richard Dawkins, like why is Stephen Hawking and Dawkins, they're both like the most famous scientists and their names sound the same. So like I don't even know, I can barely remember to say them right. Like Dawkins, the guy that's still alive and not in a wheelchair, he has the most ridiculous sounding voice accent. It's so overdone and it's so exaggerated. It's just theater listening to him talk. That guy that's like an atheist, hates religion, but talks about it like he's at least 20,000 feet in the air higher than the next closest or next smartest person. The way that he talks, like he's so above people. So like his accent and his persona of being smart is so exaggerated that it's like grating to listen to. It's really abrasive. It just really blows to listen to that guy. Him talking, whatever he's talking about, is just a bunch of bullshit, because like to me it's instantly bullshit, whatever Dawkins is talking about, because I don't care what science went into it. Like The unrelatability factor is so strong because of his exaggerated ass accent to be like, well, I'm a smart guy. It kind of sums his entire persona up to be like, um, that he's just doing things in the name of being smart, which you can definitely get into that territory if you're in the academia hierarchy in physics or science. If you're doing things just in the name of something as general as science or something, like if you get that high up that you're a famous scientist, then like I don't know that at that point you could do better than Bill Nye, the science guy, like because that's what that deserves to result in is just like a TV persona. If it's something as general as science, if you're like a famous scientist, it's really like you're just in the realm of entertainment. And so you might as well be Bill Nye the Science Guy because he's just a TV personality. But like that's all that you could do if you're really the face of science. And like there's a physicist named Sean Carroll that does that same thing but for physics, but he just appears on like he'll appear on anybody's YouTube channel where they're trying to have an intelligent discussion about physics or ask like a real physicist questions. The physicist, or like when Joe Rogan has a physicist on, the guy that comes up is Sean Carroll, but he's just like become the face of physics that you're like, oh, who is the physicist? It's this guy. And it's really like just a character or an entertainer rather than like whatever he's doing in the name of physics. Like, obviously you would be like, oh, I respect he must be really smart. I respect his opinion because he's so knowledgeable. That's what you would normally do. I feel like it would be difficult for me to respect what he would have to say about physics. If you're like at the level of being the guy who's the face of it, you kind of have to be a politician and like you're just like a mouthpiece for all of the stereotypes of it, or you're just a propaganda machine. Like if you're the guy who's the face of physics, you're a propaganda machine, the same way that a physics textbook is like just sums up all of the bullet points and summarizes it into a propaganda notebook for like that contains all of the most important pieces or like um go to like remember things about physics. But it's like I'm saying that like physics encompasses so many things that it's actually pretty impractical to summarize it into a textbook. And so if you're actually making a textbook out of physics for lay people that don't know anything about it, it's just propaganda to point you towards physics things because a book isn't going to be able to express physics and things that happen physically. It's like, so science is an example where this thing that I'm talking about, especially happens since science deals with expressing physical things. And really the only important part of like physics or science probably is like shit that you experience firsthand. And so then like when it's the task of summarizing science or physics into a book, the book really does no justice to what the actual field is about. And you can't learn anything about it by not experiencing it firsthand. Just by reading it, you're not going to know anything about it. And so basically a physics textbook just becomes propaganda, like sentences, advertising statements for like these, like to summarize the bullet points or the things that the geniuses of the field have found. Like it's just kind of, it's at the point that you express physics in the form of a book, it's just an advertisement. But like, I guess a person like Sean Carroll, the physicist, he's just kind of like caricature of, he's like caricature of a physicist. I forget what I started to talk about that got me off on this. I get off on physics. I get off on physicists are like politicians. At least hopefully not. At least hopefully I don't. What do we got? 39 minutes? 39 real minutes. But I'm talking about real and the fake, and it's like, why did I start talking about physics and Shankar? I was like, British, yeah. So like British people and why they're intelligent, or like we perceive them to be intelligent, but like look at the Geico gecko, and that he gets under the radar. Like nobody calls bullshit on this gecko for years and years and years. Like when they first introduced this mascot on TV, people noticed that he had a British accent, but it's like after a couple years, people forgot about that. And it's like this is part of what I'm talking about. Like people just ignore it when there is a British accent. Like, and the same thing is that there's this overrepresentation of British commentators in golf. Additionally, for like when there doesn't need to be for American tournaments. I mean, like tournaments that are PGA Tour, most of the shit that happens on the PGA Tour happens in America. There's other golf tours in the world that happen in different places in the world. Like there's a British tour, and so British broadcasters should cover the British tour. Like this isn't a big deal or whatever. It's not. It doesn't help anybody to get worked up about this necessarily. Obviously, like it's a pet peeve, quote unquote, but like pet peeve is a bullshit word that belittles anybody who has a problem, because like, well, it is the most belittling, demeaning thing to refer to somebody's complaint as a pet peeve. But it's like you could even just write it off by calling it a complaint, really, because like people disrespect the idea of complaining enough. You're like, that's just a complaint. But what going even further than that, to belittle like a problem that somebody raises, or just like to silence people, it's like, oh, that's your pet peeve. Like it isn't a thing that you've come up with, or like, or isn't like you're being unreasonable, or you should really, with your complaints or original things that you have to say, you should really just recognize that you're something like you're like a pet or something. Like I guess it kind of makes you into an animal. But what is the pet peeve? Like the complaint is a pet peeve, or it's like a pet argument that you're carrying around with you. Like I'm trying to dissect what people mean when they say this right now. Like there's a pet argument, like, oh, this is your little, like you have a pet, or like this is like yeah, even like, I mean, I think that describes how having a pet is embarrassing, because you can call it a pet. It's like your pet, and what you do with your pets, you pet them, and that's essentially the main function or the main benefit that you receive. So that like you can give love to this animal, you can pet it, but it's like I mean, at some point that's all that it amounts to. I mean, I don't know. It's a little bit belittling to refer to somebody's pet as their pet rather than like the dog that is the name, whatever. I don't know. It's more belittling to say like, oh, you're valid, like as if I don't have things that I run up against or things that I disagree with. I think that's a way of telling people that they should be more loving or agree with people more. It's like, well, your problems are just your own little pet peeve, your own little side projects that you should really just be ignoring. As if there aren't things to be open-minded about, or like things to create, things that need to be revealed, things that need to be brought into the light out of darkness. Like a lot of things that are like might be a specific problem to you is maybe a realm. So maybe like you can kind of create something around that, or you bring that into the light in an artistic way, and then you can like make music or whatever, or at least have an interesting conversation. And so it's like you really shouldn't belittle your problems or things that are like specific to you. It's like a way of saying that you shouldn't have things specific to you. But it's not a real problem. It's not I don't know. It's just something that people say. Obviously, you don't have to give respect to the people that say pet peeve, but this is like one of the least interesting things that I've talked about this entire hour, is this idea of like you shouldn't say pet peeve because that's belittling. Like it's belittling to me that I don't know. Everything's belittling. Everything's a critique. Like like how on Pimp My Ride, when they say that they like popcorn and then they like put a popcorn maker in the trunk of their car, and they're like, we hooked you up with a popcorn maker so you can drive around, eat popcorn whenever you want. um it's revolutionary or whatever, but like now you're driving around with a popcorn maker in your car just because you told the Pimp My Ride people that you like popcorn. It's like they're making fun of you or something, but they do that to everybody's car. And then think about that, like you probably don't have another car, and so then it's almost like they embarrass you with all the things that you told them, or they're making you they're like judging you with the things that they know about you just on the surface. Or like, well, it sounded like you liked this. Like they go in and change your car around because they don't even know you. But like, I'm saying that in reference to what exactly? Like just that all of conversation are judgments and like things that you say about yourself, people come back and try to inflate it in your life like that is the judgment that defines you, or like say that like um I don't know, like things that you like can just become critiques, or they kind of are, they're living critiques already. Like the things that you tell people that you like are what you will get criticized for. But that's not important. What's important is like, I'm saying that the Geico Gecko goes under the radar. People don't call bullshit on it for years and years, and so he continues to be on people's TV as a result. It's like a certain undefinable quality because people don't really understand the context exactly for British speech, like for the same reason that we don't really understand the British office, but we like the American office in America. The British office is like sarcastic and funny, but generally Americans don't understand where the sarcasm is coming from because they don't have enough context about Britishness. So there's undefinability about like what it actually means to be British, and so this allows British people to have a platform because people in America don't exactly understand the context, but for the same reason that they appear more and more in golf broadcasts. But like, and I would say that there's too many PGA Tour events, like too much overrepresentation of British broadcasters in golf because they just say, I mean, whatever it is not very American, and so it's like new or something. But my problem is that there really should be more representation of minorities, or like people who have Zimbabwe accent, or like an Indian accent, or an Arabian accent. But you know what we get is just nothing but a bunch of British people because America is racist and they want like whites in front of them. But like, um what I'm saying is that there should really be some amount of racism towards British dialects, or like subcultures within Britain, like within the island, like towards either Irish people or Scottish people. There isn't like those minorities. We don't often refer to them as minorities, but in America, they almost treat them like they are Americans or something. But like that's what the media is doing about it, or that's what they've chosen to do, and the algorithm rewards people that have accents. They choose to treat these British people like they are better Americans, or like that we should continue to live with the stereotype where we listen to them because they're smarter, like they're being rewarded as if they do have something better to say, even though like, and so you might say, well, maybe British people do have something better to say. Yeah, it's just that like all of those video games that there's British YouTube channels made for, most of them are made in American and are more uniquely American culture, like GTA, that like British people commenting on it isn't as rich a commentary, but yet they're rewarded. But it's also like British British pop culture feeds entirely off of American pop culture. Like, they are much more influenced by American pop culture than English pop culture influences America. And so what is this equality of British commentators where it's like there seem to be like almost as much of them as there are American ones as like represented in YouTube or something, when it's really like the amount that American pop culture influences England, like American pop culture influences the rest of the world a lot more than any other country's pop culture does. And that you're going to have like lots of British people as if their culture is the one that influences pop culture in like pop culture fields and like social media, that in places where it's completely about popularity. I don't need to see a lot of British people necessarily, because I don't know that they necessarily have the authority on popularity, especially when popularity itself is so heavily influenced by America. And these are all like Twitter, whatever, is like popularity contest. Honestly, I don't see a ton of British people on TikTok, so it's like I'm exaggerating a little bit. It's just that like there would appear to be a lack of racism towards like white minorities that are like more diversified groups of whites, or it's like people don't even recognize that. Like, there's isn't there like special acknowledgement or recognition to be paid to French people or people from the Netherlands, like these different cultures of people that are relatively white, like different kinds of white people. We don't like, there isn't a lot of discrimination for these, but also it's kind of like there is discrimination. It happens on the periphery, like what you're getting with this podcast, but also like the mainstream perception builds these people up and gives them a platform and calls them smart and intelligent, like the United Nations and the European Union, and they're so progressive, and the media treats them all like the greatest because they follow the rules the best, like Britain is so authoritarian. And like the media is like, oh, they're the example for us. Like, the media would like to have to have America and everybody continue to live in the world where we don't have any discrimination for these subgroups of white people, when it's like, I mean, I guess honestly, there isn't like discrimination for subgroups of any kind. Like, there isn't like a ton of people that hate South Africans or anything like that. So I'm just saying, like, well, British people is actually a pretty broad general group, and they just get too much credit. That's what I'm saying. And there's just like, can we be like, can't I hate British people? Or like, there isn't any of that, and nobody getting mad at somebody for hating British people. Like, there just seems to be this general positivity, like we all act like there's always this positivity between us and British, even though the cultures are different. Like, there's just too much of this acting like we're equal, when this same thing doesn't carry over to like Americans and Mexicans. There isn't a lot of us acting like we're equal there. We kind of act like we need to be divided, and if we're not, then it's this giant problem, like we need a wall between us or whatever. And this carries over none at all to our relationship with British people. There, it's just like, oh yeah, they're all equal, and they can jump on any broadcast and say something because, but like, there's like undefinability, so maybe it works for media or something, but like the media doesn't care about diversity so much. Like, if a British person works for them anyway, like, this is that's a pet peeve of mine. And so that's a pet peeve. But yeah, I guess I went 54 minutes, but so British people are annoying. Something that is annoying is like, I'm watching this TED Talk about, not a TED Talk, it's this guy from the TED organization interviewing Elon Musk. It just came out a few days ago. It'll probably be referenced for years to come. Just like everything that Elon Musk does an interview as, like people reference what he said during it for like the next decade now. It's like that's how much influence he has, but people really hate him for succeeding at the game that plays out in the world. And then people are like, you, how are you going to distance yourself from Twitter? Like, you can't buy Twitter. You're the richest man in the world. Um, you're going to, like, what are you going to do? What are you going to put in place to distance yourself from Twitter so that you don't influence it? Because you're the richest guy in the world, you can't just own Twitter because then you'll use your money to whatever. Um, like, and people just like to say that Elon Musk, there's nothing about him besides that he's the richest person in the world. Also, like everybody is completely stupid in their ability to discriminate between him and other rich people. They're like, oh, I guess they're all the same. That's what they like to do. They're like, that's what everybody does. For Elon Musk is the same billionaire as Jeff Bezos and as Zuckerberg. Everybody instantly becomes stupid. I mean, not everybody, just people who hate billionaires or want to make this big thing. I just feel like the people that make it part of their personality to hate money or hate billionaires, that they're just like compensating for something, or they're just jealous of the billionaires, because it's like you really don't get to say that like he can in the world that we live in, because that's the way that the world is set up. It rewards the rich. It rewards the powerful. It's a very, like, it's a flawed system, but unfortunately, this entire system that everybody is playing this game, everybody's participating in this giant popularity contest for success, for authoritarianism, for authority. And in order to get more authority, you have to follow a lot of rules, is what I would say about it. I don't know how many people would agree with me, but it's like this is a theory that I present to you. I haven't heard anybody like people have probably said it in different ways. I haven't heard anybody present the theory that morality, like popularity is a result of morality. I think directly, like the more moral you are, the more rule following you are, so more popular you're going to be. That's the way that the world is set up, like a system of, like the entire world is a system of authoritarianism, giant authorities governing sub-authorities, governing more sub-authorities, all the way down to the local level. Like the local level, you're under sub-governances of higher and higher governments, whatever. It's a power structure, but in order to advance in that, or just advance in company, you have to kiss asses. But even just graduate in school, it involves a lot of ass kissing. And like, if you're going to be successful in school, it's a bunch of rule following there. And like being successful in school is what's going to get you money, because it's essentially just figuring out what the teacher expects of you, because the teacher for your classroom, like if it's just high school or elementary or junior high, the teacher dictates the rules for your class or classroom, and you have to figure out what they want. And or just like the curriculum, you have to figure out what the curriculum wants. You have to follow the rules of the curriculum in order to get good grades. You have to follow the rules of what the teacher is saying is going to be on the test to get good grades. And like that's what they say about in college, is that your success depends on figuring out what the professor wants. And that's basically true, because the professor sets the standard. The standard doesn't exist without them setting it. They do their own spin on it. They do an artist rendering of the curriculum. Like a professor maybe has more control to set their own standards than a teacher does, maybe a little bit probably. But like they set the rules, and then what you're getting a good grade in is following the rules set forth by a professor, or like learning the language of a professor, or like figuring out their likes and dislikes, or like being intuitive about who they are, or what they're going to put on a test, whatever. It's dependent on you following rules, following standards. Success in basically every case is dependent on you following rules, and following rules is like a lot of morality, but morality specific to place you're in. Like morality for a university set of rules, like classes at a university, the morality there is getting good grades, or but it's like being integrating and being choosing to be part of the system that's set forward by the professor, choosing to be part of the set of rules is you being more on board with it, or being more moral, or giving yourself over to the customs and conventions of it. It's just like rule following is what's going to cause you to be popular in this world. It's the same as like YouTube. It's just that it's following the rules of a game, but you like in a straightforward way, you could see how just recognize that everything is this game. Like the world is just a giant popularity contest. It's like it's almost like the world's religion or something. The world's religion is like popularity or authoritarianism, and in order to follow that religion, it's like, of course, following the rules is going to get you more successful. Like if you're not a rule follower, you're more headed to prison and lack of financial success. But like following the rules, staying within legal laws and shit like that is what's going to cause you to not pay any fines and like keep money. It's all about following the rules if you want to be successful, because everything is just a giant game. Obviously it's just a like, and so if you want to win, the game is to be successful or to be popular. That's what the world's religion is, or like what they're teaching you. It's like if you really want to involve yourself in the teaching reality, or like the reality where there's things to learn, or like where there's things to graduate towards, like in school, it's all a bunch of rule following. But then people get mad at Elon Musk for winning the game, which he did by being the richest guy in the world. Like he followed the rules or whatever, and then people act like they could morally have some high ground on the guy that followed the most rules or something. But it's like Bill Gates got whatever, how many billions of dollars to do whatever he wanted, and then you see the result of what he did with his billions of dollars, because some people, when they get billions of dollars, are actually going to do shit. And Bill Gates tried to control the entire world by launching a virus that he used to do his bidding, to say that all of the masses have to listen to me because he has the most billions of dollars invested into vaccine companies for years and years prior to that and shit like that. As it turns out, he has a lot of experience and authority directly in this area and has been talking about pandemics for years. And so, and helped with, because he has so many resources. In my opinion, I think he helped launch the virus on the world, or whatever the virus is. I think he was influential in creating it, and in order to set in motion a plan or a process of like controlling the world through authoritarianism. They were experimenting with it the most in Australia, but it didn't pan out there. But the whole thing especially didn't pan out in America, because a lot of people, there are too many people in America that are like, fuck masks, or fuck you telling me to do whatever. And basically the rest of the world is sort of following in like America's example, like, because America generates a lot in the name of pop culture. You might not like to hear that, or like it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. You don't like to hear that. Obviously the rest of the world has a lot to say in the area of pop culture. Obviously, like Japan and India and whoever, they have a lot to say that influences the world. They have original things to say and shit like that. I'm just saying, like, America generates a lot of that original pop culture and that kind of like influences the rest of the world. But like, even to the point of shit that happens politically, but like the world is so connected. It's like America is kind of a leader politically, where the rest of the world sees how they react to globalists trying to enforce lockdowns in the name of, well, we have to lock you down because of the moral good of you following the rules of this virus so that people don't die or whatever. Like, they're holding some morality over everybody's head through the virus, using the virus as a medium or as a tool. as a scapegoat for them to do their bidding or whatever. Like anybody uses any of these things as mediums, and then like at some point, but it's like what Bill Gates does with billions of dollars is enact a giant virus on the whole world, and he's like, oh, virus mythology, virus ideology, virus world, virus genre, reality, art, because like that's just representative of his personality or what he brings to the table. Like him trying to control the world through billions of dollars comes through as a specific flavor or set of characteristics, and his is something like viruses, and which is like goes along with he's a computer person. But like anyway, like Elon Musk gets $130 billion and he's like, well, I'm going to spend 10 billion of that to own Twitter. And then people are like, well, what are you going to, you're the richest guy in the world. But like, what gets me is just like not being able to discriminate between Bill Gates and Elon Musk when everybody's like, all of you are the richest. Like, there's nothing more trustworthy about Elon Musk or something. People like to act like that's not the case, or like they couldn't possibly figure out if he was or not because he's so rich that like you like, oh, I'm just blinded by his richness. He's just one of those rich guys. Like as if he's not more forthright, obviously, in interviews, like, and the way he presents himself on Twitter. Like he's obviously more forthright with what he's saying. He doesn't keep things in secret, and he kind of pushes forward this into the world, like this set of beliefs about things is that people should be more open or treat things not so seriously. Like oh, it's Twitter. Like you can actually just go in and buy Twitter, but like especially if you have billions of dollars or whatever. But people act like he's not any more trustworthy than another billionaire, as if you don't have the ability to look at one billionaire and another one and see that someone like Warren Buffett isn't saying anything about how he made his billions of dollars. Elon Musk is kind of like engaging in the world and active on Twitter and saying dumb shit and like calling himself not like he's just saying things like treating things like they aren't serious, as if you couldn't say that there's something more trustworthy about him than another billionaire, but people are like automatically, well, because you're the richest guy in the world, or make it so that he is that rather than a person that created all of these things. But like because you're the richest guy in the world, you have to not be involved. But it's like the world is already set up for the popular people to succeed. And so if he got $130 billion, like the world can't say, oh, that's not the system. You actually can't buy anything with billions of dollars, because like, how is the world going to go back on that when the entire world is fomenting this environment of the more money you make, the more successful you are? Of course, that's your reward. You actually get to buy Twitter and then turn it and then just destroy it or do whatever you want if you have billions of dollars, according to the way that the rules of the game are set up. But it's just that, like, if you did that, you would probably then lose money or lose clout or lose fame, or like you would get socially shamed if you did something that was that horrible. But like that Elon Musk is able to skirt through things, continue to make enough money, like people still perceive a lot of strength in his companies to give him money or whatever, would reflect that he doesn't, like, that just goes along with making all the money in the world, because people would continue to perceive him as moral enough that he's allowed to make decisions or whatever. Like, because I'm saying that at some point social shaming would overwhelm him if he was just making shitty decisions with his money. And I think that that's what you see happens with Bill Gates, is like ultimately an individual can't do everything in the world. Like Bill Gates kind of tried to control the world with his money, in my opinion, but it's like it didn't pan out because it gives you a lot of bad publicity, and like bad publicity kind of kills you in this world. At least it would appear it is that way. Like Bill Gates is kind of an example of that, but like probably really the only example we have of that, of like what can the world actually turn down the most powerful individuals. I think that you see that that's possible with what happened with Bill Gates, and that we're not all under lockdown. But like, and not just Bill Gates, but Klaus Schwab and other Bilderberg, whatever people. But like, the world of the fake offers there's a lot of depth in the world of the fake. I'm serious. But I guess I'll just have to talk more about that later on. It was interesting. I wanted to talk about just like you allow yourself the ability of perception, just perception itself. Um, this is not territory that we get into in the world often enough, or it's like we probably don't give ourselves enough freedom to perceive things because we'd be like, oh, you're going to be crazy. But I guess I'll talk about that in the next one. Crazy, insane. Yeah, whatever. Stay tuned for more updates about any other podcasts I start in the future, and subscribe, tell people about it. Thanks. Bye.